My name's Matt, and I will be talking to Kelly Vaughn about adapting skills across tech stacks and effective remote team management.
Without further ado, the first question that I wanted to ask you, because I check your experience and I check your background. So you have a bachelor in psychology, two master degrees in social work and public health. And my first question is like, how on earth you ended up becoming an engineer or a leader in this area?
Yeah, they don't teach you how to code when you're getting a degree in social work. It's kind of weird. No, I actually taught myself how to code when I was 11. So I got a pretty early start on a small website called Neopets, where I wanted to like build my own community, and to customize it, you needed to learn how to code. So my dad bought me a book called HTML Goodies. That was very basic HTML. It's back when inline CSS was the way you're writing CSS. It's in the world of frame sets and all that good stuff when Microsoft Front Page was something you built websites in. So yeah, I got a really early start in my software engineering career, really starting on the front end side of things. I quickly started freelancing. My first website I ever built for a client was when I was 14 years old. It was an online catalog for a hunting supplies store up in Michigan, and I was paid a t-shirt. So really good deal, for them. It also was an extra large t-shirt, so it's not anything that I could possibly wear anyway. But yeah, I continued to code all through middle school, high school. I sold MySpace layouts. All the little things that any opportunity for me to make some money coding, I did it. And then I continued to code all through undergrad and grad school as well, while I was getting these other degrees, because and I got these other degrees because I always said if I had to code for a living, I would grow to hate it. And I have
Mm.
this, pattern in my career where I say I'm not going to do something and then I do it. That goes for turning engineering into a career. That goes for starting an agency. That goes for shutting down my agency. Like all the things in my life, all the major events in my life that took me to where I am today are a result of me being like, yeah, I don't want to do this, and then I somehow end up doing it anyway.
But I assume like the background that you have, it's really helpful with working with people, especially as a leader, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest standout things for me in particular is the fact that I can rely on the fact that I'm a trained therapist to basically, you know, work through any particular sticky situation that happens in the workplace, establishing rapport, interviewing folks so you get a really good read on people very early on. You basically leveraging my social work degree. Now, my public health degree, not really useful in the workplace, but it was an interesting degree to get.
And you mentioned the agency that you have. You are quite a big fish regarding the Shopify, right? So
Yes.
you work on a lot of projects. You had your own show, the podcast. So you're quite familiar with the whole environment and the Shopify, and a lot of people know you. And I'm just wondering, like, how this shaped you um, like to becoming a director of engineering at the Spot AI, like how this influenced
Yeah,
your current role.
it's been such a wild ride. I got into Shopify by chance back when I was in grad school because I happened to see a tweet from somebody saying, "Hey, I have extra freelance work. Can if anybody who's following me sees this and wants some freelance work, talk to me." And I was like, "Cool, I'm in grad school and I'm obviously poor because the American school system is so incredibly expensive." And so I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's talk." And so he gave me some WordPress work, and then he's like, "Hey, I have this site that's on a platform called Shopify. Are you interested in like figuring it out?" I'm like, "Sure, absolutely." And I immediately fell in love with it. And this is now 10 years that I've been working on the Shopify platform. Even now, I still have a couple clients I work with in the Shopify space. So I'm still not as like deeply rooted into it, but I'm definitely still working with it. So I went from freelancing as a Shopify partner, then Shopify expert, and got listed, which definitely grew my client base, to transitioning from my freelance business into an agency. And then we went through the peak of COVID, through the pandemic, like when everyone had to get their businesses online, and our company grew significantly. Our headcount grew significantly. Our revenue hit seven figures for the first time, which is super exciting. And I just got so burned out. because there was just so much that was going on. And so I took a 1-month sabbatical because I basically worked myself out of a job. And during that time, I co-founded a fintech startup also in the e-commerce space, but it was my first foray into a product-based job instead of focusing on service business. And I loved it. I loved that it was a specific thing that we were actively working on. I could pitch this product to customers, no problem, but I didn't have to sell different services every single time. And so it was a big, like, eye-opening experience for me. And things did ultimately didn't work out for me there. The company still exists, but I ended up leaving. But I took this as an opportunity to be like, all right, let's make this switch from being this solopreneur, this entrepreneur, and join somebody else's company. And really, it gives me this opportunity to learn what it's like to grow at a growing startup, at a scaling startup, because I always did 0 to 1. Maybe you could say 1 to 10, but I've never seen anything beyond this at this point in my career. The largest team I ever worked on was my own 20 people. So to join a larger startup was a really great opportunity for me. And that's how I ultimately became director of engineering here at Spot, where my umbrella continues to grow, and my, as things typically do as you continue to grow at an organization.
Nice, great story. And you mentioned the burnout. This is interesting thing. I had it like 3 or 4 times, and I always like after a while diagnosed it why it was so. And usually it was related to the responsibilities that I had, and I really hated it. So I'm just wondering, in your case, what was the case when you were running the agency? What was the thing that you really hated?
I hated the feast and famine. I loved being able to provide my team with basically their living, in that they were able to grow as an engineer and grow with this company that was growing, that I'd started from literally nothing. And that was so rewarding. But the fact that you constantly have to sell, we were moving up market as well, which means the buying cycles are much longer. There's a lot more on the line, where you can have a signature in hand and then their funding gets pulled. Again, this is 2020, 2021. And so you never knew what was going to happen at that point. And so I think that's what really led to my burnout. And then the second piece of it was, there's just so much that was happening with the second startup that I had co-founded, that I was somehow trying to manage running 2 businesses full time, which I think anybody could be like, yeah, that was dumb. That was not going to work out. So that definitely contributed as well.
Okay, thanks for the honest answer here. Um, and I subscribe to your newsletter, and you write a lot about the leadership, like in engineering especially. So one of the cases that many people maybe not struggle, but this is challenging, to hire the senior roles, to hire senior engineers. And in your case, what advice would you give to them?
To those who are interviewing for a
To the
role, or
leaders, to the leaders
trying to hire
hiring
an
senior.
engineer.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that is, for me, I kind of come from this background where I believe that I don't need to see you, I don't need to watch you code as a senior engineer to know that you're going to do good work. What's most important to me is how to think through a problem. You know how to think through it in a way that you need to decide what is going to be most important to deliver now, and what is going to be most important to deliver, into the future. And be able to think just beyond that now kind of project-based work, and understand the impact of your work. I also, when I'm talking to senior engineers, possibly, interviewing, for example, I want to say, or I want to know, are they going to be able to mentor the team? Are they bringing some unique piece to their background that is going to really help this team grow? That's why I love non-technical backgrounds. That's why I love interviewing folks who don't come necessarily from the same tech stack that we're actively using, because they're likely going about solving problems differently from different industries, using different tech stacks, and they're going to be able to challenge the thoughts and opinions of those who have been at the company and been working on the product for so long. So those typically, tend to be the things that I'm looking for when I'm actually interviewing an engineer.
Sorry, thank you for that. Um, let's change that. Maybe not. I have a really interesting question. Let's start with the fun questions, let's say. So I'm just wondering, what was the most challenging task, project that you have ever tackled in your career?
So I have a different answer for this one than something that's actually technical, and that is personal. And what that is changing my public persona from Kelly the Shopify entrepreneur to Kelly the engineering leader. Because as you said, I've been in the Shopify space for a long time. I built up this following. I built up this entire idea that this is who I am. And I think this is a really important thing when it comes to entrepreneurship. Businesses fail all the time. All the time. And as an entrepreneur, you become so tied, your identity becomes so tied to the business that you have built up, where if something happens to it, you feel like you've lost a piece of yourself. And to have something happen so much in public for me and be so visible to other people is I knew I am moving on from this idea of, I'm always going to be an entrepreneur. That never changes. My entrepreneurial mindset is what allows me to thrive in any company as well. But the fact that people have watched this quote unquote failure of my agency go down in real time and watch me pivot my thinking of I need to move on from this. I've grieved this and I need to now shift who I am and what I talk about to engineering leadership, because this is what is actually, bringing me joy in my day to day. That was probably one of the most difficult tasks that I had to do, because people would be like, wait, they're not following my every single move, but they'd be like, wait, what do you mean you're not in Shopify, like in the Shopify space anymore? Like, what happened? And then I had to rehash that story so many times that eventually I just wrote a blog post about it, or wrote a newsletter about it. I'm like, here, you can read this. I'm not talking about this again. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer, but I'm not going into detail again.
Nice, good approach. Um, okay, and I would say you're pretty successful anyway, like with the Shopify thing, and like being now at the Spot AI. I think it's going pretty well when I observe it from the outside. And I'm always wondering, like watching the people and trying to understand their strengths. Like, what do you think, like in your case, what are your strengths? Like, what attributed to your success? Like, what kind of strengths, what kind of features that you have, you know?
Yeah. One that is most definitely a privilege is I came from a technical family. My dad was in IT, my mom would, tinker with computers as well. And so I learned how to turn off and on a computer before I learned how to write. Like I had always been around technology. And so I also had, the ability to start learning how to code when I was 11. We had the means and the time to be able to, for my dad to buy me this book and give me the time to sit down and actually learn how to do this. That really steered me to where I am today. Now, on the more, personal side of things, my non-technical background is definitely a strength in leadership. As you alluded to, my degrees in psychology and social work have definitely played a role in my ability to thrive in a leadership type role and kind of work through, jump through all the hurdles that, I had to get through to get to where I am today. I'm also very driven. And you ask anybody who, knows me personally, I'm always juggling many, side projects. I'm always working on other things. I'm always asking myself what's next. And it's sometimes to a fault, where I was talking to our head of people, our VP of people at Spot the other day, and I told her, like, I'm content. And she's like, oh, well, we want you to be more than just content. I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. I have not been content in 4 years. Like, content is good. I can finally just enjoy and sit and exist in this space and be proud of what I've accomplished, because that, being driven has allowed me to get as far as I am today. I learn quickly. I'm always trying to figure out, I will work until I can figure out this problem. I'm also not afraid to, ask for help if I just don't understand. And to be able to just be like, yeah, I'm just chill, like I'm good, is a very important step for me.
I absolutely love it. Like being content, I have the same problem with my co-founder. Like, it's Yeah, I totally get it. It's really hard to be happy because you always like you are always eager to go for this mastery. You always see that you can be better, you can do
Yeah,
things better, and it's not, you know, and
yeah.
then saying like this is really good, I'm good at something. It's really really hard.
It
So
is. And it's also something that I often talk about in the leadership space as well. You know, everyone goes through different phases of their lives, and the phase that they're in is going to reflect how they are treating their career as well. You know, there are times in your life where you're like, I just want to go for, I will put in the extra time, I will do whatever it takes to get to this next step. And there are times in your life where you're just like, I'm going to let things coast and stay stable for where I'm at right now, because where I am, for example, if you know, recently moved, or you just got married, or you just had a kid, like, you don't need the instability of trying to figure out what that next step is going to be in your promotion necessarily. Like, you're probably happy with where you're at right now, and you're just like trying to figure out life with, you know, a newborn at home, for example. So that's like a really important distinction to make, in that engineers, or, you know, leaders in any company, really, it doesn't have to just be engineers, but people will pull back, and they will take a breather, and that shouldn't be like seen as, oh, this person is, you know, withdrawing, this person is like stagnant in their career. Just like let them be. You know, we have high performers, we have medium performers. We're going to like teeter between high and medium all the time. You don't want to be a low performer, obviously, but you know, you get a lot of value out of your medium performers because you know exactly what you're getting out of them. Your high performers are the ones who are always going to be pushing for what's next, what's next. And so it is okay to go from being a high performer to a medium performer, especially if you're somebody who will probably end up being a high performer at some point again.
um, and let's get back a bit to this newsletter that you are
Yeah.
having. I really like because you have those short bits and you try to kind of share your experience based on the things that you have experienced in your career
Yeah.
and get some lessons out of it. So I'm wondering, do you recall maybe any that you could share with the listeners? I mean, something that works for you maybe, and it's not so obvious, like, you're going on the right way, but everybody is taking the left side, right?
Yeah.
So maybe something like this, if you recall.
One of the, I don't know if I've actually written about this. I've been writing the newsletter for so long at this point that I forget what all I've written. But one of the hills I will die on that I often say is, you do not have to do live coding exercises or take home exercises for senior engineers in an interview process. And in the engineering space, that can be seen as like, wait, what? But if you got to the point where you are in your career where you're a senior engineer and your resume reflects that, when you have something like a system design exercise in your interview, you're going to quickly read through the BS. You're going to quickly understand, does this person actually know what they're talking about, or are they throwing out buzzwords to make it sound like they know what they're talking about? Like, as you start to dig into the weeds of like, let's actually like work through solving this problem, you don't have to write any code. Like, let's talk about how you would approach it. You can learn very quickly about what somebody knows and what they don't know. You know, are they pulling from past history? Are they pulling from, you know, I read about this somewhere, but I haven't actually tried working on it, but here's what I would try to do. Like, are they like, how are they actually working through this problem mentally? And especially if you're working with a couple engineers on the system design problem in an interview, and they're able to kind of bounce off of each other, and you know, you're like, okay, well, this wouldn't work because this would, you know, be incredibly slow at scale. Like, it just, you know, let's think through, if we had like, you know, instead of 10 widgets, we had 50,000 widgets, what would this mean? And you can watch that process, that thinking process, really play out in a system design interview without ever having to see them write code. Which is why I really value having people come into the company who are not necessarily immediately like, our stack is, you know, let's say Node and React. If they come from like a C# background, or they come from like a PHP background, a senior engineer can learn another language. Like, they're all under, like, at the core, they're all the same. I can go learn Go tomorrow if I wanted to. I'm not going to because I have no reason to. But it's the same. Like fundamentally, a language is a language is a language. They all kind of have those same components. They're just presented differently. And so it allows you to bring in on other engineers who are maybe not necessarily writing React all the time. And honestly, one of the best engineers we have on my team did not come from a Node React background, and he quickly learned it on the job because he's a great senior engineer.
Let's change the topic a bit, and let's talk about the AI because everybody's talking about it, so we should too.
I literally
And
work at a company called Spot AI.
so maybe you could tell a bit more about your experiences with the AI. How do you use it? Like, how do you use it in a safe manner? Because I know this is like a major topic right now, right? Because of the data processing and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So uh, I'll talk about Spot first because the way that we handle AI is pretty interesting. We have models that we've built and trained in-house, and we do not use our customers' data to retrain models. And I think that's a very important thing that you need to ask whenever you're looking at any sort of generative AI or AI related tool. Are you using my data to train your models? And if so, I don't want to use it. There's a lot of proprietary information, especially because Spot AI is video intelligence. We are recording video and we're analyzing that video and storing the metadata and running this metadata against the models to be able to detect what's actually happening in the videos. And when you're doing that, I should not be combining all my customers' data into one house to say, all right, well, now you kind of know what this company is also doing because it's all the same. And this is something I'm working on our generative AI policy right now. I'm updating it. And this is exactly one of those things like, how is the data actually being used? It's been interesting watching the growth of Spot. I've been here for a little over 2 years now. And it's also been interesting watching the conversations change around the product because we're moving past the basic education piece of what is AI and how can we use it and how is this dangerous to they understand what it is. They understand the risks. They're asking the right questions around privacy and like just data privacy in general and security. But they're also like starting to think, how can I connect the dots with the other systems that I'm using in house to be able to leverage this technology to better further my business, to serve my customers, to keep our students safe, to, whatever you're using the AI for. And so this is such an interesting, trajectory we're seeing our customers go on, which I kind of attribute to like, think Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've moved on from like the basics of like, I need video for security to I need video for, business efficiency to I need video to be able to connect all my systems together to have one full model, one full workspace. And as you're having these conversations as an engineer, it's really exciting because you don't have to go down to like the very basic layman's terms of like what even is AI in the first place. So that's Spot. Now, on the side of using generative AI in your day to day, I've already talked about the data privacy things. So the way that I usually approach using generative AI, which I definitely use in my day to day, is with ChatGPT. I typically use it more for create this outline. I'm about to work on a new talk that I'm going to be giving, and I'm going to say, here's my newsletter content. Turn this into a slide deck outline. It's my own content. I don't care if it goes into the world. It's already public anyway, but it's going to save me a whole lot of time from having to think about coming up with it from scratch. I've had it write policies for me. I've had it write emails for me naturally. I think everybody has done that. So like I'm very choosy about how I use AI in a safe way and kind of what I'm sharing with it. I also most definitely use ChatGPT to ask doctor related questions, which obviously is grain of salt kind of territory, but mostly out of curiosity, like, what does this mean?
Do you still use Stack Overflow or do you ask first like ChatGPT?
I still default to Slack to Stack Overflow, but I think it's mostly like muscle memory as opposed to I
Mm,
know I can get good answers from ChatGPT for the most part. I still think, the thing about leveraging AI is about prompt writing. The better you are at prompt writing, the better responses you're going to get. And at least I know if I search for an error message and I end up on Stack Overflow, somebody's seen it before and they're going to have it's very straightforward answer of how to fix it. I'll get more details from ChatGPT, or I might get more details from like GitHub Copilot, for example, but it's not necessarily going to prompt the correct solution, which is quite interesting.
We met, I think, 2 years ago or something like that in Warsaw because you were building the team there, and you travel quite a bit. So you have a team in Poland, you have a team in the US. Like how do you approach it? How do you manage that? Do you do like really often, like do you want to be one time per, I don't know, 2 months in Poland to meet the team, to discuss, to do brainstorm? Like how do you make it work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because my team is fully geographically distributed. I have 3 engineers in Poland. I have 3 engineers in the U.S., but opposite coasts, like one in California, one in Atlanta, where I live, and one in Florida. I also have an engineer in Amsterdam. I have one in Vienna, and I have one in India. Like
It's
truly.
it's super easy to find the time slot in the calendar, right?
It is 11 a.m. Eastern. That is the correct answer.
Okay.
So
That
yeah,
makes
I
it.
mean, I get out to Poland about once every 3 months to, spend some face-to-face time with them, or they'll come stateside if we have like a more, company-driven event. We're working through the details of getting the entire team together more often. We just did an engineering team gathering in Warsaw. I guess it would be like 4 or 5 weeks ago, about a month ago. Which as soon as you get the team together, you just feel that dynamic change every single time. It's just like these people have been working together for so long, but now they're actually working face to face, and the speed at which you get work done is so much faster. The sharing of ideas is a lot faster, and so there's a lot of value in actually getting together. And now we'll always have a remote engineering team, just because I believe that talent exists everywhere, and we should not limit ourselves to where that talent, who works for a spot based on where they live. I think there's a lot of value in spreading things out. But with that said, it's really important to make sure you have the coverage you need for, certain hours of the day. And that's where things get kind of tricky as soon as, the clock strikes 12 Eastern and everyone in Europe or India is just like, peace, I'm out for the day. And then I have 3 more engineers to cover everything on customer side. And so that is definitely a challenging thing. But, as far as getting together, I'm out there seeing them at least quarterly, and we have weekly meetings every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. All of our meetings that we have, scheduled within all of engineering and so on, 11 a.m. Eastern. It's just the sweet spot.
I think this is the greatest tip of today, 11 a.m. Eastern. So like for everybody working remote teams, yeah.
Exactly. You've got 8 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, so it's early for them, but it's not too early. You've got 5 p.m. in Europe, and that's, on the later end, but it's not too late. I, prefer not to have an 11 a.m. on a Friday meeting personally. But you're able to, shift things around. It's a little bit harder as soon as you get India into the equation. There's no really good time when they're literally 10 and a half hours different from the East Coast. But can't win them all.
So I promise this is the last difficult question. I highly believe in learning from mistakes, and especially I believe that you have an entrepreneurship background. So I feel that entrepreneurs are really open about the mistakes and the learnings from those mistakes. And I'm just wondering, in your case, do you recall any like a significant mistake decision that you have made, and how did you and what did you learn from it?
I alluded to this one earlier. I bit off more than I could chew with trying to run 2 companies at the same time. I thought that everything was going so great with the tap room that, of course, I can just kind of leave it on autopilot and start this new company. And in doing so, I realized just how it was a perfect storm, unfortunately, because I was also dealing with, the pandemic obviously was part of it. And so the shift in the markets and how people were, paying for projects and how budgets were shifting around was absolutely a contributor to this. But my biggest mistake is I think I could have probably sold the tap room for a cool $1 million, and instead I ran it to the ground. And that's because I was not ready to let go of it. And instead I ended up having to let go of it anyway. And instead of getting $1 million, I ended up with, a couple $100,000 in debt, which is now gone. I paid it all back, so I don't have to worry
You're
about that anymore. But,
okay.
that is one of those things that kind of sits with me. And as I said before, as an entrepreneur, your business is your baby. Like you tie your identity to it. It is, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into making sure it succeeds. And it can be really hard to recognize when it's time to step away. And that
Good.
I fell victim to that as well. And I think there's a way that I could have approached, and the reason is not just for like, yeah, I could have walked away with 7 figures, like that's cool. The problem is everybody else lost their job in the process of me having to wind down the agency. And with that, relationships were lost as well, which is unfortunate, like truly, truly unfortunate. And so I think that's probably the biggest mistake that I made. And, when I tell people now, if I were to do it again, if I were to start over today, would I do this again? And the answer is no. I think it was a right place, right time of starting the agency, growing the agency, scaling the agency. And then I got very ambitious and very confident. And I got overly confident in a time when everything was absolute chaos. And that is what really drove me to the downfall of the agency and ultimately leading to me leaving the startup as well and joining Spot. But I mean, I'm at Spot, so at least something good came out of it.
But I'm always like I'm seeing the entrepreneurs on LinkedIn or talking with some guys and they're running 2, 3, 4 businesses, and I'm always like impressed, like how do they manage? Like I don't know about you, but I focus so much on one thing,
Yeah.
and I believe that the focus on one thing and make it big and then jump to another thing, right? But some guys can do like a few things and quite a big things, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
like you have only 24 hours. I'm always like how they do it.
Yeah, I think offshoring allows you to do a lot. And in talking to some folks who run multiple businesses, that has definitely been a tool, I'll say, that they've used to unlock the opportunity to build multiple businesses at the same time. To me, it then becomes a bit of an ethical question of what do you value most in building a business? Are you in it to just make money with the understanding that, you are likely underpaying people because you want more profits
Mm,
from more businesses? Or are you going all in? And this is, it's not a blanket statement. It's not black and white. Like there's definitely, again, we've hired internationally because we know it's cheaper, but I also recognize talent there too. Like this is a decision, this is a well thought out decision we're making. But I see people brag about hiring somebody for $5 an hour, and I'm just like, I my dude, I wouldn't brag about that. That's not something to be proud of.
But I still think like it's the worst KPI that you can have to start a business to do it only for money, right? Like if
Absolutely.
your major KPI is that, it's like a really bad approach.
You're going to be really upset. You're going to be really disappointed in the end. Yeah, there's so much energy, like mental and physical energy that goes into running a business that most people don't really think about, and they see it as an opportunity, especially during a time when so many people are getting laid off and everyone's like, "Here's your opportunity to become your own boss." I'm like,
Mm,
they literally just lost their job. They don't have stable income anymore, and you're saying,
mm.
"Let's make it even more unstable by starting your own company." Like, if you're ready to do that, by all means, but go in for the right reasons, for sure.
Okay, the last question that I wanted to ask is about like some books, resources, maybe conferences, something that was really influential for you, like as a leader, that you learn a lot and you had those aha moments, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So I co-host occasionally, as I mentioned, with a podcast called Dev Interrupted. I love their content. I think there's a lot of really valuable content on there. There's a lot of really great interviews. I also have a page on my newsletter website for all the books that I recommend to everybody. Crucial Conversations is one that's very highly up there. The Culture Map is definitely one. Let's see. I read Atomic Habits every single
Oh,
year. I think it's just always that's my good January reset reminder of just like, hey, break things down. You want to change, like break things down significantly. Yeah, I would say take a look at the page that I have on my it's engleadership.xyz, and if there's a link that just says books. See that you'll find a bunch of my reasons for recommending books and who I'm recommending them to as well.
awesome. Thank you very much, Kelly, for today's talk. It was really honest answers, I have to say. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Follow Matt on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Better Tech Leadership newsletter.